Spring practice is coming. We promise. Oklahoma is getting ready to hit the practice field here in the next few weeks. We know the spring game is set for late April. Welcome into the voice of college football, OU, for a 47th consecutive time. And the guy that makes it all work, Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football. We would ask everyone to leave those comments and questions there in the live chat. We get to as many as possible. If you have yet to partake in our weekly Oklahoma show, we're here live every Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central, where it counts. And so please make this a regular stop to join us for the live show. And if you can't join us live, of course, the video posts and you can catch the replay. Jason, how you doing today?
Doing good, Mark. Thanks for having me on as always.
Absolutely. I should say thanks for having me on. Jason brings the wealth of knowledge and insight into Oklahoma football. I just fill in the gaps when I can. But again, we appreciate everybody because ultimately you guys make this happen because if we broadcasted to no one, it wouldn't last long. And you guys, when it comes right down to it, produce this show with your comments and questions because we do our best to get to as many as possible. The Super Chat's available, which is a contribution to the channel in this particular show as well. So keep that in mind. You can also hit me up at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App if you want to bypass YouTube. I would just be interested if you would notate that this is for the Oklahoma show. Jason, before we get down to nuts and bolts of Oklahoma football and what's going on right now, Jason has just completed a highly successful basketball season in the coaching ranks. And I have followed along, Jason, as many have on Twitter and mostly on Facebook, as you've kept us updated on the accomplishments of the team. So I'm just curious because, you know, you are an avid fan of Oklahoma football. You write for Last Word on College Football. You're here analyzing what's going on with OU. And then you've been coaching, I think, for quite some time. And you get to see that side of it and work with young people. And just I think that brings a different perspective to it. So just tell us a little bit about what your team accomplished this year and what you draw from that.
Yeah, so I think thanks for that, Mark. Happy to kind of talk through that. It's easy. Obviously, it's easy to talk about. So yeah, this year was the best year that we had. We finished 21-5. We won the first state championship for the first time in 21 years in school history. And this is a private Christian school in the Guaso, Oklahoma area. So yeah, I've actually this will be. I just finished my third year. I've done some assistant coaching before, but this was my first job, so to speak, in terms of a head coaching job. So the year previous to I started, the kids won one game. One game went 1-14, 1-15. So, and then to get in 3 years to 21-5 in a state championship win is truly remarkable and really just a testament to the kids, to the work that they've put in. And so there's a lot of things I enjoy about the process, Mark, and I think one of the first things was really just kind of building a culture that I tried to do early on, is really just build a culture of competitiveness and really put these kids in try to do everything that I can, put them in position to be successful. So, and some of that takes time. Some of that takes time for kids to buy into what you're selling. And so over the first couple of years, it was, it was better. First year we won 10 games. So much improved team from the team that won one game. Last year was a little bit of it was such a fragmented season with COVID. We had a number of games, Mark. If you would believe this, we only had two games that we were able to play, but before Christmas. So we typically start our season a little bit earlier than most basketball teams do, late October. Typically, towards the end of October is when we start our first games, and so you could tell probably between October, November, December, only playing two games was a bit of frustration within the kids and within us as well, just being able to play those games. But I think early on this year, I could see a difference in the kids buying into exactly what we wanted to do. Um, was really playing more as a team, doing all of the little things that it takes to be successful, and not only basketball, but just sports. But and I think overall, Mark, one of the best things that for me, two things was um, what we really focused on, and I know that me and you have similar beliefs in this manner, was glorifying God on the court in everything that we've done. And so I think that personally, putting God at the forefront has been a very, very pivotal factor to what we've done, and just the climb and just the process of understanding that little little things that you go through from a basketball perspective is life lessons. So I think they really did a good job of coming back from things that, when they had little success. Just a small little story here. We played. It's the smallest school in terms of the just in terms of the class that we play in. So it's A, and so it goes all in our classification. It goes from A all the way up to 3A. So we played in a Christian tournament in North Carolina earlier this year. Finished second, lost at the buzzer. Lost by 2 points at the buzzer. Finished second. A lot of tears, a lot of emotion, and I think that was one of the things that fueled us going through the season. We came back from North Carolina. We had a day off, and then we played one of the better 3A schools. We lost by 42 points at home, lost by 42, and then we won 18 of our last 19 games outside of that. So the things that the kids are able to overcome, I think they're a lot more resilient than we are as adults. So just seeing the maturation of kids, not only through a 3-year process but through a single year, was something that was very heartwarming and very good for us. And it just you as a kid, a lot of us, whatever sport that we're playing, if it's basketball, baseball, football, whatever it is, we had about as good of a dream ending as anyone uh, would ask for. A state championship game. We were up 11, 12 points in the first half, controlled the game for the most part. Second half, it was a little bit more of a grind, a struggle. The team we were playing made a shot to tie the game up with about 6 seconds left. We got the ball down court, and it was funny is we were struggling a little bit to get the ball inbounds. So it was about, like I said, 7 seconds. We were a little bit flustered, so I tapped the official on the back. I was about to call a timeout, and then we started to get the ball in. So then I stopped, um, and then we ended up making a 3-point shot at the buzzer to win the state championship game. So that's things that as a kid, that you dream about in the backyard, or in the on the just practicing, playing around and stuff like that. So it was a storybook season, and just really exciting for the kids and everybody that supported us overall.
Yeah, I just have I feel so good for you and for the team, and have great admiration for you in particular, and anyone who genuinely pours their heart and soul and everything they have into a group of young people, to again both uh, improve them as athletes, but more so for the greater good and for the a life lesson to develop their character, and certainly to take a team that won one game, and not to, of course, you went to work on the basketball side of it, but to model for them and to teach them and to set as a standard, this is what's important to us, God first, glorifying God on the court, and then proceeding from there, and then to see the results follow really show, um, the impact that that can have, that's reflected on the court, that you would think many people would, okay, well, that has nothing to do with that. How do you become a better basketball player or team by setting these other priorities? But sports are about trust and relationships, and especially at formative years, that's a responsibility. The coach, no matter what they prioritize or how they lead their lives or what they say to the team, is going to influence them in some way. So to make it a priority to influence them in the right direction, and then trust that the basketball is going to follow in the hard work that you put in. And that's certainly just a testament to, I know you put the testament to their hard work and determination and dedication, but certainly you were the person that led them down that path. So it's incredible. It's a tremendous accomplishment.
Well, I appreciate that, Mark. Yeah, and it was, it's a grind, but I think more than anything, for me, these kids, their willingness to not lose, I think their will to win, I guess is a better way to put it, was just incredible throughout the year. We had games where we struggled and we didn't play as well as we should have, but they always seemed to find a way to win. Someone different stepped up every single game. We had four different leading scorers for the year, and in the championship game, we had 22 turnovers. So, to be able to overcome that and do everything that they've been able to do this year is a testament to them. And one of the things I continuously told them was that I have very little to do with the success that you guys have had throughout these 3 years. I just put a little accountability to it, and you guys did the work, and they did a ton of work on their own. They did a ton of work, and they had just a kind of a renewed area of focus this year that they haven't had in the past. So I know people want to hear more about Oklahoma. We'll get there, but yeah, I appreciate the call out on that, Mark.
Absolutely. We are here to talk Oklahoma football. And if you've been here for any of the shows, you know that we grind away at 60 or 65 minutes of Oklahoma football talk and nothing else. But this is certainly just as a friend of Jason, and also just admiring his work and what he put in with his basketball team. And it's a huge accomplishment to win a state championship, and then also knowing Jason's heart, his values, and then also reading in some of the Facebook posts, knowing what the mountain that had been climbed to reach a state championship, not just taking over some juggernaut that's won state championships for years, which is certainly still an accomplishment, but to take a team at the bottom and to build them both on and off the court. I just thought it was a tremendous story, and wanted to hear it myself, even if nobody else did. But I know that people out there gained from hearing from that. So, Jason, we appreciate you sharing your recent experiences on the basketball floor. That's great.
Thank you, sir.
Talking Oklahoma football with all of you. Leave your comments and questions here. This isn't necessarily a question here that I posted to the screen, but we've got Big Hud here, who's basically, I think, making just a comment on what will be more of an impact in regards to the players that have already been on campus. And it, of course, depends on the player, depends on the positional unit. But some of these players that have been waiting for their opportunity or pushing for their opportunity, that have been on campus for a year or two or three, versus this influx of the 2022 class, and whether those guys will immediately seize playing time and starting jobs.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point, Mark. You've got Oklahoma's not devoid of talent on the roster, as Big Head has represented here. Not devoid of talent. I think that the talent that Oklahoma's been able to bring in here, with the eighth ranked recruiting class in the 2022 cycle, along with the transfer portal guys that Oklahoma has got, and interestingly enough, it's mentioned there at all levels. When you go to the offensive line, and then the secondary, and then the defensive line, they've got good aspects of all those players. But yeah, Oklahoma's got some kids at all of those levels that are going to continue to play, and going to have to be a factor. I think particularly when you talk about the offensive line, it's an area that Oklahoma, it's probably the biggest wild card from an offensive perspective early on this year is just to see how good and how improved can this offensive line be. Obviously, it's the same. We still still got Bill Bedenbaugh running the ship from an offensive line coach, but you got a little bit different emphasis with Jeff Lebby as the offensive coordinator, a little bit different emphasis in terms of strength and conditioning program to get those guys up there. But yeah, you've got some kids littered on the defensive side of the ball. More specifically, when you look at some of those guys that maybe played a little bit last year, but are going to be asked to be in a lot bigger roles. Josh Ellison is a guy that kind of comes to mind from the defensive line. You've got all across the board. You've got guys that didn't play an extreme prominent role, but they will get an opportunity to challenge it. We'll get into that more when we preview those position groups on the defensive side of the ball. But I think it's a good Oklahoma has a good mix, Mark, of kids that have been in the program a few years that will have that opportunity to step up versus some of those kids that that are freshmen or transfers are coming in that will challenge those and have good healthy competition at those spots.
Even though Arizona State doesn't get a whole lot of attention nationally, quarterback Jaden Daniels, certainly from the time he stepped on campus and took over the starting role as a true freshman, there has been a talent to behold. Not that he's been a polished elite quarterback from start to finish, but he's a tremendous player. Was good enough his freshman year to throw 17 TDs and only 2 picks. He actually led the nation that season, and I know it's a team sport, so I hate to emphasize quarterback play when it comes to records, but he led the most fourth quarter comebacks of any quarterback in the nation his freshman year as a freshman. And Herm Edwards, of course, coincided with Jaden Daniels stepping onto campus and becoming the starter there at Arizona State. He's been the starter for 3 years. The middle season, not a whole lot to go on, of course, with the COVID season really impacting the Pac-12. They only played 4 games at Arizona State. Came back, had a pretty marginal season this past year, 10 touchdowns, 10 picks. There's a lot of controversy surrounding Arizona State's program, considering they have known NCAA violations, and that has yet to be worked out in regards to what those penalties will look like. So for whatever reason, and that may have factored into it, Jaden Daniels has announced here in the last couple of weeks, excuse me, that he has entered the transfer portal. And I got to say, I didn't do any kind of deep search in regards to scanning the nation about who might be a good destination. But had I done so, I would not have selected Oklahoma necessarily as the destination after they picked up a top 10 quarterback in Dillon Gabriel. But you're seeing some things online, whether they're turn out to be substantial and have some substance to them or not, that Jaden Daniels in Oklahoma may not be completely far-fetched.
No, definitely not. I think with Oklahoma kind of being in the whole Jackson Dart sweepstakes in terms of his services, I think Oklahoma feels, where they really need some additional depth there. We've talked a little bit about the guys that Oklahoma will have behind Dillon Gabriel, guys that have no experience whatsoever. So I think Oklahoma still wants to get a kid that has a little bit of an experience. Should have something happen to Dillon Gabriel, should there be an injury or even a small or serious nature that were to happen, you'd like to have a kid that has a decent amount of experience. And to your point, Mark, over the last few years, Jaden Daniels was one of the more prolific passers from a Pac-12 perspective, really good touchdown to interception ratio until this year, which was a little bit bizarre. But obviously there was a lot of different things kind of surrounding that program this year. So yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that he's a kid he is definitely more of a drop back passer, but he does have the ability to move in the pocket a little bit, which fits really into what Jeff Lebby's trying to do. So Brent Venables even talked about, as an overall perspective, over after the 2020 recruiting cycle was announced along with some of the transfers that are coming in here this year is that they're going to be really active in the transfer portal. So don't be surprised to see if it's not Jaden Daniels, maybe someone else. I think, but as is always the thought process, you don't know. What you don't know is what some of these kids, where some of these kids' mind is at. Are they willing to come in and compete for a job, or do they want to go to a place where they feel very, very strong that they'll be the guy, kind of regardless of how they play early on in the spring from a competition perspective. So I think that'll be interesting. It would be a good, obviously a huge value add for Oklahoma to get a guy that has big time college football starting experience overall. But yeah, I mean, to your point, he wasn't a guy that I kind of thought about. Yeah, Oklahoma's a place where he definitely could potentially end up, or that he would look for. But I think it's something from a depth perspective that Oklahoma is going to continue to evaluate here, here late before spring. And after the spring games, there's going to be another flood of kids that hit the portal, based on don't feel like that they're going to get an opportunity to play a lot or start or whatever that might look like at whatever position. So I do think Oklahoma will continue to be very active in that portal discussion with, I mean, and it definitely will happen at the quarterback position, I think.
Join our Discord. We just started it a week ago, and you can access that by going to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. Go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, sign up there. I get you the link to Discord, and we've got about 20 college football fans just like you on there talking college football all the time. I jump on myself at least once a day and take part in the conversations. And you'll see a number of channels, which are the Power 5 conferences and a national channel, but we can change that up and do whatever we want in there. For example, have an Oklahoma channel. So there is both text conversations and also voice conversations that's available if you know nothing about Discord, because I'm kind of talking to myself, because about 2 months ago I knew nothing about it myself. So we've got into the Discord game, and you can join us there by signing up on Patreon and searching Mark Rogers TV. The Oklahoma offense, I'm going to go back to a comment that I saw in the chat. It was either last week or the week before, and it stuck in my mind, obviously, if I'm bringing it up now, that Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley has declined a little bit each year. And I ran through that thinking, okay, 2017, 18, 19 on through, and thinking, okay, that's not necessarily something you can define and say there's no question they've declined. They still came within a whisker of a college football playoff appearance last year, at least going to the Big 12 championship game to play for one. But I think the argument could be made that on the offensive side of the ball, that there has been a slow decline under Lincoln Riley since a very prolific 2017 with, of course, a veteran quarterback, then a tremendous NFL quarterback, followed up Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. Certainly the offense was top 2 or 3 in the country, both in yardage per game and points per game during that run, and now slipped to 18th in points, or I'm sorry, 18th in total offense and 8th in scoring offense this past season. So I know you've been reviewing the numbers and the trends and kind of coming up with your own take on that.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Mark. I think Oklahoma's a little bit spoiled. I think just in terms of how good the offense has been over the last 5 years. To your point, but just doing a little bit of research and kind of looking at that. When you look at their best year, just kind of from a points per game perspective, was 2018. They averaged 48.4 points per game that year. 571 yards per game total offense. They were a little bit better in 2017 in terms of total offense. They had 580, just a little bit down in turn. I mean, I say down 3 points below at 45 points per game. So when you look at that from a total yardage per game, and I know you probably take more into the points perspective than you do yards. When you look at where Oklahoma was, as I mentioned, 2017, 580 yards per game, they slipped to 452 this year per game. Now, when you say that, yes, Oklahoma's still top 15, top 20 offense, top 10 in scoring. But when you look at that 130, almost 140 yards per game decline, Oklahoma was below 40 points per game for the first time under Lincoln Riley. First time since 2014, they averaged 39.1 points per game. So there has been a little bit of a decline. We've talked about this overall from a macro level, Mark, in terms of in-year results going from Oklahoma in 2017, the overtime loss to Georgia, then the loss by 11 points to Alabama in 2018, then the 35-point loss to LSU in 2019. 2020 don't make the playoffs. They have the Cotton Bowl win, and then last year don't make the playoffs, nor do they win the Big 12 championship game. So that steady decline, there's a lot of reasons I think behind that, right, Mark? I mean, I think last year you could kind of point to a little bit of a maybe the influx with the coaching situation and the later part of the year. A little bit of more inexperience at the quarterback position than they've had in the past, with with Caleb Williams playing as a true freshman for the last half of the year. But I think one of the things that has come to the forefront is the offensive line just hasn't been as good the last few years. So and that's why I think you talk to anyone and I think they're probably the pivotal point for Oklahoma this year, at least on the offensive side of the ball, is improved play on that offensive line. But like I said, Oklahoma's been a little bit spoiled in terms of how good their offenses have been. Since for a long time, right? I mean, not necessarily just since Lincoln Riley came aboard, but since Bob Stoops has been here, they've probably had a top 20, 25 offense way more times than they haven't had. So I think that's a very interesting trend to see what that looks like here in 2022 with a new regime, so to speak. On the offensive side of the ball, different attack. I mean, obviously they've just got a lot of the same coaching staff that they had in the past, minus Jeff Lebby, and incorporating that new offense. But you look at this team, Mark, they're going to have a lot of new faces all across the board on the offensive side of the ball. From quarterback, you lose Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams. You insert Dylan Gabriel at the running back position. You lose Kennedy Brooks, who was one of the better running backs that Oklahoma has had, just in terms of his vision, his just he's probably not the most athletic guy that OU has even had this year, but a guy that knows how to find the hole. He knows he has really incredible vision. And then wide receivers, you got a lot of just kind of looking at that. You've got a lot of kids that have moved on. So I think that this will be a really big year for Oklahoma offensively, to see if they can kind of start bucking that trend a little bit from from where they were. And it's not a huge decline, but I think it's enough for people to notice that hey, there's been a little bit of a decline in Oklahoma's offensive productivity over the last few years, especially when they could go up against a really good defense. Oklahoma really struggled against Baylor. Last year they struggled a little bit against Iowa State offensively last year, which obviously is not one of the better defenses in the country, but absolutely Baylor is. It was last year, so I think that'll be interesting. The one thing that you like if you're Oklahoma is Lebby has some SEC proven success, right, at Ole Miss over the last couple of years. you got to think that the talent that Oklahoma has is on par with what Ole Miss has had over the last couple of years as well. So I think coming into that, that's why it's going to be such a big, I think such a big and interesting spring for Oklahoma on all sides of the ball, but particularly offenses. The new. Um, putting in everything new to see how those players react and how quickly they can learn that system.
Is it fair to make this evaluation, talking about the offensive line, that when it was playing better for the first few years under Lincoln Riley, he inherited most of those players. He inherited that culture for that particular unit along the offensive line and that standard, and it obviously deteriorated under his watch. How much of it can be attributed to anything connected to him, I don't know, but he's the man in charge, and it did decline.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The last 2 years, last year Oklahoma averaged about 188 yards on the ground. The year previous, 180, but the years previous to that, their lowest was 218 per game. 2019, they averaged 240 yards per game on the ground. 2000, let's see, 2019 was 240, 2018 was 248. So you go from 248 to 188 in a 3-year span there. That's a significant downturn just in terms of how Oklahoma was able to be balanced on the offensive side of the ball. It turned in more to more of a pass heavy, not necessarily from a play call perspective, but more of a pass heavy offense in terms of productivity. So Oklahoma needs to get back to, and when they were successful this last year, they were able to do both. Towards the latter half of the year, they were able to do both pretty in a pretty good fashion. They had a couple of to make those statistics even worse. Oklahoma had a couple of games where they had over 300 yards rushing, 2 or 3 games. I know that they were over 300 yards against Texas, and one of the better offensive performances of the year, up over 200 yards against Oklahoma State. Just couldn't get enough stops or couldn't get scores toward down the stretch there. But yeah, and I think that's the thing that's really a misnomer with Lebby. Here is it is a very run heavy, run happy offense. Obviously he's going to be as unpredictable and as balanced as he possibly can, but it's not an offense that throws the ball a lot, and he does a really good job at using what roster he has, to be successful, and where that looks and what that looks like. So I think the running game is going to be very, very interesting this year, Mark. We talked a little bit about who that guy might be to be the guy this year. Eric Gray is a guy that didn't run extremely well between the tackles, but he still averaged over almost 5.5 yards per carry last year. So that'll be interesting to see what that packing order looks like from a running back perspective. And Oklahoma has probably from top to bottom in that running back room a lot more talent this year than they will have last year, even with losing Kennedy Brooks.
Yeah, to further on your last point, I think a lot of college football fans, even knowledgeable college football fans, make an assumption when there is an offensive background genius guru, excuse me, fill in your blank on the terminology you want to use, attached to a particular coach, that he must be a pass happy guy. That it's all based on passing, and because of the trend of the game in offenses in the last 10 or 15 years, that it's got to be a pass happy offense, and that's what it is if you're that well acclaimed. So people would be surprised. And I just heard these comments made recently, some content that we produced concerning USC and Lincoln Riley, and just assuming, okay, we're going to throw the ball a lot more. And USC, they threw the ball. They had an air raid offense under Graham Harrell they're going to run the ball more, I would think, than they have in the past. They were super pass happy, and people may be surprised. Ole Miss was 12th in the nation out of 130 teams in rushing offense last year.
Yeah, and you saw that, Mark, with if you follow Lebby's career, even a little bit, even at Baylor, I think you think at the forefront that those offenses that they had with Baylor, they chunk the ball down the field, and they do. I mean, it's a little bit more of a deep threat offense, throwing the ball, that what Riley had previously. But yeah, I think the running game is a big part of what they've been able to do to be successful. So offensive line has, again, kind of comes back to that, has a lot of on them to be better, to be more physical, to be stronger, and that's the thing that they struggled with a little bit. Technique wasn't always just completely bad, but I think when you looked at that, with the strength up front wasn't quite where it needed to be. And I think the other thing that's going to be interesting this year, Mark, and it's something that we'll see a little bit in the spring, but it won't come to fruition until a little bit more in the in the fall when the games start, was that Oklahoma's run scheme. There was a lot of complaining, just from people that follow Oklahoma, some of the beat writers and people that cover Oklahoma, just how sophisticated Oklahoma's run scheme has been over the last few years. And I think maybe that kind of taking a toll on them, just in terms of thinking too much and not playing as much as they really needed to be. So that will be something to kind of keep an eye on early on this year, just to see what. And I don't know from an X's and O's perspective how complicated Jeff Lebby's run scheme is versus what Riley tried to do a little bit. So I think that will be something to watch for, just to let those kids go play and not have to think as much on the fly.
Roberto is wanting me to quote Roberto to show him some love. So I guess that means posting his comments. He believes that Brent Venables, having the approach that he does, is going to lean on Lebby to run the ball more than he may have otherwise. Who knows?
Yeah, I think so. As you move to the defensive side of the ball, Mark, I think there's a renewed confidence that that the defense will be better. I don't know about saying that they'll be just fine. Especially early on. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of bad habits, and I think there's a lot of culture on the defensive side of the ball that needs to get instilled. But I think thinking at the end of the day that it's hard to imagine Venables not being successful on the defensive side of the ball, and understanding what does that successful look like, right? I think Oklahoma's a top 25, a top 30 overall defense. I think that's a successful first season overall. Of course, not understanding how some of these teams, how well some of these teams will be in the Big 12, just in terms of offense, of offensive side. But yeah, I think there's a renewed confidence that Oklahoma is going to be good across the defense, especially with the recruiting class that they brought in, returning guys that they have, and then some of those transfer guys that have came in, along with the coaches that Oklahoma has on the defensive side of the ball.
We appreciate you all being here each and every Wednesday. The time is 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. Oklahoma fans, for OU Talk, as we head towards spring practice, we're going to be dissecting positions each week to get you set for spring practice. Want to remind everyone that you can join us on Discord to talk Oklahoma football, and we've, of course, always have other college football fans in here as well. Any college football discussion is welcome there on our Discord. Just go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, and you can sign up right there. I get you the link, and you join us on Discord. We've got college football conversation going on there all the time. You can join Jason at Last Word on College Football, of course. And We've got plenty of Oklahoma content coming your way, courtesy Jason, also Parker Thune from 247 Sports. We've had some segments with him recently dissecting the offense and the defense in particular, and anything else going on with the Sooners. So this weekend is a big recruiting weekend. I know that there aren't a whole lot of details, but
Yeah, Mark, it looks like Oklahoma has between some of the 2023 and 2024 cycle, Oklahoma will have somewhere around 10 kids on campus this weekend to for an official visit. So, like you said, there's not a whole lot of detail. Some of these things get kind of hush hush until but there's quite a few really good names here in the both the 23 and the 24 cycle. So we'll obviously keep our ears to the ground and see if we see anything in terms of a commitment or anything like that. But I think the team has been the coaching staff has been really good. Really hitting the ground running and I think Oklahoma has more of is starting to get more of kind of a southeastern presence from a recruiting perspective. And obviously that makes sense with what's coming in the next step from an SEC perspective. But Oklahoma's really focused on that area more so. Obviously, they've got the California connection that they previously had, and they want to continue to have that pipeline as well. But it's been clear early on, Mark, that Brent Venables has made Oklahoma a priority, and then southeast part of the country a priority. Certainly, Oklahoma as Oklahoma moves into the SEC whenever that ends up being.
that is going to be someday when we find that news out, when that news drops, that the SEC and Oklahoma and Texas have gotten together and decided, okay, this is the time. Bam. 2023, 24, 25. I don't think it's going to drift off too far. I can't imagine they would go past, let's say, my guess is either 23 or 24. I can't imagine they're going to let it drift past 24 to 25.
Yeah, I don't think so either, Mark. However, I was thinking about this one. I think we were talking a little bit about kind of the playoff discussion last week with there being no expansion until 2025. I wonder if part of the thought process for both Oklahoma and Texas. Okay, we had an assumption that this playoff expansion would happen sooner rather than later. Now it's not until at least 2025, 2026. So does that make some of their decision making a little bit different? Say, hey, maybe we stay in the Big 12 a little bit longer. We have an easier path to the playoff right now with the way that the playoff is situated. And then once we're in the SEC 2025, 26, whenever it might be, you look at an expanded playoff and maybe it puts us in a better position there. I don't know. I mean, I'm still at the end of the day, I'm still with you. I think probably I would be surprised if it's longer than 2023 or 2024, but this could be something that's in the back of their mind from a thought process perspective.
Yeah, it's a good point. Unless Texas gets its act together, they have no business thinking about a playoff or that determining any kind of decisions they make. But when it comes to Oklahoma, certainly they've been a playoff fixture for the most part. And if they dive into the SEC with still a 14 playoff, of course, that severely lessens the chances as opposed to remaining in the Big 12, being a team that has won the conference 3/4 of the time. And that typically leads to a playoff appearance and then riding that out as long as you possibly can before making that jump to hopefully coincide with the expansion of the playoff and increased opportunity in the SEC. What is an interesting possible move or decision to be made by the Big 12 is they're, of course, going to hang on to Oklahoma and Texas as long as they can from a financial standpoint, but it's got to kind of irk them that Oklahoma and Texas may drive their decision and kind of leave them just hanging on to their conference affiliation until they want to leave. They've already added 4 members. Is the Big 12 going to simply allow Oklahoma and Texas to dictate when they leave, which they have no control over, but which leads to the incoming 4 members? Or would the Big 12 just say, you know what? The heck with you. We're going to bring these 4 in. We're going to have a 16-team league because we want to get started with our 4 new members.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought process, I think, on both sides, Mark. When you if you're the if you're the Big 12, I think the initial shock is over, right? I mean, you've the that when that initial shock happened, you're probably like, okay, let's they don't want to be part of this league, so it's best if they leave, go ahead and leave now. Now we want to get our money. We want to get our clause for them, kind of getting out of the agreement early, but um I don't know. It's a weird kind of situation for both sides when you think. I mean, I'm sure they want, to the point that you made, they want to hang on to Oklahoma and Texas as long as they possibly can to have that revenue stream continue to come through the conference. But at the same time, they probably want to move forward with what the Big 12 is going to look like in the future with with the 4 teams that they added. Now, when you look at Oklahoma and Texas, they probably feel like they hold all the bargaining chips in the world, outside of the fact that they have to pay this money. So do they feel like it's worth paying the millions of dollars that it's going to take to get out of the conference, to know that year one they're going to start making tons more money in the SEC? Or do they bide their time, and they feel like, okay, we can hang on to this for a couple, 2 or 3 more years, and we don't have to pay near as much, and then we're going to get tons of money from what it will be like being in the SEC. So I think it's very interesting. I could see, honestly, I could see it going could see it going both ways. I don't think the Big 12 has anything that they can do to push Oklahoma and Texas out the door early with kind of the way that grant of rights deal is set up. But yeah, it's weird because there was so much this summer there was so much. Um, I guess it was early fall. There was so much discussion around that for like 3-4 weeks, and then it kind of, I think then it kind of just stopped. So, very very interesting to see when that talk will pick up, and what the eventual timeline will look like.
So, based on what you just cited, the Big 12 could not make the decision that, okay, you have decided, Oklahoma and Texas, to leave our conference. Now you are deciding to hang on for another season, another season, another season. The Big 12 could not say, we're deciding when you leave. You're not part of our conference anymore. You made that decision. Now we are determining the timing of that. So, bye.
Yeah, no, it's well, and it's such a and I think this is the reason why, Mark, why such a delay in the playoff expansion, right? Because no one knows, truthfully, when Oklahoma and Texas are actually going to make that jump. It could be, in 2023, or it could be 2025. So no one really knows what that's going to look like. So I think it's hard when you look at them, when you say, does the Big 12 get an automatic bid? Well, yeah, they do right now. Obviously, no if, ands, or buts about it. They probably should, get, not necessarily an automatic bid, but the Big 12 is going to hold a lot more water than it would without Oklahoma and Texas. So from that perspective, you kind of can't blame the kind of the playoff committee for saying, no, we're not quite, or the conference commissioners along with that, we're not quite ready, to expand. But yeah, I think that the placement of college football in terms of what that looks like for the future is going to be interesting for the next few years to see. Is there any more dominoes that fall on top of this? I mean, I think there's been a lot already this year, um, and even at the lower level, lower level, I guess I should say, you know, as far as that goes. But yeah, I think it's going to be so interesting to watch, to see what that time frame looks like. Like I said, I can see the advantages of Oklahoma and Texas looking to jump immediately. Jump when I say immediately, 2023. But I can also see them, thinking let's sit back and let's wait a couple years, and then we don't have any. There's no early out clause. There's no financial penalty, and then we start fresh in the SEC.
Yeah, if OU, let's say they jump in 2023, OU and Texas, and then there's not a playoff expansion until we know, unless things change drastically, they've announced it's not going to take place at least until 2026. Maybe it's further than that OU is really going to have to be on its game to get to the playoffs in the SEC. They got to win the conference, or you have to be a one-loss non-champion. That's pretty much how it's played out for the SEC.
Yeah, it's a much, we've talked a little bit about Oklahoma and I mean Texas to a bigger degree, but Oklahoma as well. Early on, I mean, there's going to be some stumbling blocks, absolutely. When you look at no matter how no matter how the conferences, the divisions, I should say, are aligned, if it's a pod system or whatever, Oklahoma's going to take a little bit of a lump early on. Texas may take a little bit bigger of a lump early on, just kind of understand, where they're at. It took Texas A&M a while. They've been, upper towards the top half of the SEC, the higher portion of the SEC over the last couple of years, but it took them a while. Missouri was a little bit fortunate, when they started, they even made the SEC championship game a couple of years, and then they've fallen off a little bit over the last 3 or 4 years. But yeah, there's some it's going to be there's going to be some growing pains, without a doubt, and having Oklahoma or Texas for that matter, being in a position to your point, be a one loss second place team, or even a third place team, or winning that SEC is going to be a hard thing to achieve right off the bat.
Folks, we appreciate you being here. Also, consider grabbing some friends, family, social media acquaintances, and letting them know that we're here every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time. And we would love to expand the audience. And so, again, there are people that you come in contact with on a regular basis that love Oklahoma football. And we've got a number of other college football fan bases represented here. So let them know that we are here. Not everyone knows that we're talking Oklahoma football here every Wednesday and have an Oklahoma channel here at the Voice of College Football. People out there that you're connected with, you are the ones to let them know. So please do share the link out on social media. Subscribe right here to the channel. Check out Jason's work at Last Word on College Football as well. Jason, we appreciate another edition of OU Sooners Live, and we will do it all again next week.
Sounds good, Mark. Thank you so much.
We'll see everybody back here next Wednesday, 11:30 a.m. Central Time. Sometimes the schedules have to change, so again, it's important to subscribe, hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live for sure. But again, unless things change, we'll be back here next Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Central.